Alright guys, so welcome to this video. It's been highly requested, so here it is, how I edit my photos. So starting off with what I use to edit my photos, I always edit my photos on here, my computer, and I use Adobe Lightroom. Now I've seen people get super creative and super fancy with Photoshop, adding things that aren't there, taking away things that are there. Basically, my only intention is just to edit what's there and optimize what's there, and that's why I use Lightroom. Whoever you are, I recommend perfecting the basics, perfecting the step above that, perfecting the intermediate, and keep perfecting your level before you move on to the next one. So in order to emulate the sort of editing style that I use, it's very important that you do two things. Number one, you have to shoot in RAW. Now you might not know what RAW means, but basically that holds more data within the photo so it doesn't compress the photo. So for example, when you take a photo with a JPEG, within the camera, once you take it, the photo is compressed and a lot of data is lost because that's the final product. When you shoot RAW, the photo is uncompressed and the camera hasn't finalized the photo. It's left all the data there for you. So you can go in Lightroom, in Photoshop, etc. and you can optimize. Now I'll leave on screen somewhere right now how you set that up on the Sony a7 Mark II that I'm using right now. For Canon and whatnot, I'm sorry, unfortunately I don't know. Panasonic GH4, stuff like that. I don't really know how to set that up, but for Sony a7, it'll be somewhere on the screen right now. Now this photo is mainly intended for people who take their photography a bit more seriously and are shooting with a mirrorless or a DSLR, or even some point and shoot cameras can shoot RAW nowadays. If you're editing your photos on your iPhone or something, I will come out with a video for that in a bit. I used to do that for months, so don't worry about it. But if you have a nice camera, if you have the ability to use your computer and use Lightroom or software like that, then this is for you. And the second most important thing you need to do when taking your photo before you even jump onto your computer is ETTR. Expose to the right. I like to go for quite a contrasty look. I like deep shadows, deep blacks. So in order for that, I need to overexpose. Now when you get a bit more advanced, you can actually look at your histogram and see as the exposure is moving to the right, and you can see when it's starting to get washed out, etc. But for now, don't really worry about that. Just if the photo looks somewhat washed out, if it looks a bit overexposed, if you want to emulate my look, that's what you're going to need to do. So remember that. Shoot in RAW and overexpose. Let's jump onto the computer. So guys, excuse my messy background, but we have 4 photos here. One of my friend Reed, one just random street shot, one client work, and then another one of my friend. So we're gonna go ahead and open up Lightroom. Now one of the mistakes I used to do is I'd import the photos into iPhoto. Now I don't know about your version, but my version, that actually converts the RAW into JPEG, which is not what you want. So import it straight into iPhoto right here. As you can see, there's a couple photos. So let's open this up, hit import down here, and I actually have my source, the tutorial folder. Click all of those, hit import. Now we'll start off with this piece of client work. Go ahead, hit develop. Now the first thing I do is I go all the way down and I apply my preset. Now what that does is it makes my life a bit easier, and it also has a bit more continuity to my photos. As I said, I have my own style and it's taken me a little bit of time to develop, and I'm sure it will always change and evolve, but you should find your own style and then try and keep some continuity to your photos. So I have my preset set up here. Now this is temperature. This is shot in the day. Now if you want to get technical with this is the Kelvin. So this is shot in day, which is roughly 5200 Kelvin. So I think I'll go ahead and bring this up to 5250 just to make him a bit more, just to make his skin a bit more natural. Now you can see he's way overexposed, so we'll go ahead and bring this exposure down, and now you can start to see the details coming back in. So I think we'll go for -70. I'm happy with the contrast. The highlights we'll go ahead and bring down all the way so you can see his jumper starts to stand out more, his eyes, etc. I'm happy with the rest of the exposure. Let me just show you, this is what 0 clarity would look like, and then this is what 23 clarity looks like. I like a more clear, sharper image, and very contrasty, as I said. I'll keep the vibrance where it is, but this is what sort of effect that would have. Saturation, I already have it up to 16. Now this I play around with sometimes. If you look at his skin tone, it's moving more towards the yellow right now. If I want to make it a bit more orangey, I can go ahead and play with this. I'm happy where it's at right now. I might actually just change it to 0, make it a bit more natural. Saturation, once again, I'm happy with that. Or I want to make it look more natural, so I'm going to go ahead and bring that down to 0 with my certain preset. There's things that are naturally more saturated, different colors, and that's something I've played around with a bit. Luminance, I like the fact that his face is exposed brightly, but I'm just gonna go ahead and slide this down just to see what sort of effect it would have. I think we'll go ahead and move that down to, rather than +10, we'll move that down to -5. So scroll down, I'm happy with the rest of that. Now, even in broad daylight, I still like to add a bit of noise reduction, so I'll make that 20. That'll also smooth out his skin a bit. Then we'll move down, and last thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and add some grain. I like the sort of grainy effect. Now, last thing we'll do is we'll move down to grain and we'll add some grain. So if we come close to his face, you can see that the clarity is adding a bit of grain around him, but I want to go ahead and give it an old vintagey look. So I'll go ahead and add 40 grain, maybe even make this 50, and I'm pretty happy with that. So I can hit Y, and you can see the side by side here. Super cool. I'm really happy with that. Let's move on to the next one. So this next photo is of my friend Filippo. What we're gonna go ahead and do is, I don't like the bottom half of his legs, so we are going to crop that in and then auto angle just to make the photo straight. Much better. Go ahead, add the Imagery Creates preset. Now let's come in on this. You can see that the whites and the highlights are super exposed. So we'll go ahead and bring the highlights all the way down and the whites, and that's the power of shooting in RAW. You have the ability to do that. Let's zoom in. But it's a bit underexposed for my liking there, so we'll bring that down. I think it's a bit too blue, so I want to go ahead and add, maybe make that 5800 Kelvin. Now you can see, once again, that's what it's like with 0 clarity. I like a fair bit of clarity to it, so we'll make that 25. Now you can see there's a lot of overexposure on his face and his neck especially, so I'm gonna go ahead and bring the luminance down. But in terms of hue and saturation, I'm happy with that. So noise reduction, we'll go ahead and bring that to 20, and then add a bit of grain to that as well. And yeah, here's the side by side. Super happy with that. Now I think the last example I'll show you is Reed. This is a night example, so it's a bit harder to work with. So we're gonna apply the Imagery Creates preset, and one thing you'll notice immediately is that the white balance is just shockingly poor. Now we'll go ahead and we'll make that bit darker, so we'll bring that to 2800 probably, or no, we'll make that 2700. Now one thing you'll notice about this photo is it looks like he just got punched, so let's go ahead and fix that. We'll bring the contrast down -50. You can see one side of his face is still pretty dark, so we'll bring up the blacks, or the shadows, I mean. Once again, there's this really grungy look to the photo that I'm not actually going for, so we'll bring the clarity down to 0 on this one, and now it's looking a lot more natural. Now this was shot on a lens that I don't normally use, the Sigma 30mm f1.4, so we are gonna enable profile corrections and remove chromatic aberrations. Just to make sure this is perfectly centered, I'm gonna come here and auto angle. Very rarely play with the tone curve, so I'm not going to play with that. HSL, I do want to bring out his face a bit more if I can. Let's see what that looks like. No, we'll leave the luminance where it is. But if I wanted him to look a bit more yellow, I could bring it that way. Or if I wanted to change the hue and make him look a bit more orange, I could bring it that way. Right now it's a +10. I think I'll bring it down to 0. Now I'm liking the exposure on his face, but I don't like everything around here. So what we're gonna go ahead and do is add a vignette, and that just puts all the focus on Reed. It's night, so I'm gonna bring the luminance to 30. And then lastly, I'm gonna see if I want any grain on this. We'll put a 40 grain. And no, I think on this photo, I'm not really feeling it. So here is the before and after. So the last thing we're gonna do is we're gonna select these 3 photos. We're gonna hit export, export, and put in a subfolder tutorial edit. And it'll go ahead and export those. It'll take a bit longer than normally would. Once again, that's because it's RAW rather than JPEG. So now that it's done, we can go ahead, tutorial edit, and I actually edited this before. So here are the unique ones. You can see, open that up, really happy. So guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video. Now this is for anyone who wants to take their photography a bit more serious. If you're just shooting with an iPhone or you're shooting with a point and shoot like this, you can still use Lightroom, and it's probably better than most photo editing apps. It's just not really necessary. This is for someone shooting with a mirrorless or a DSLR and they're shooting in RAW. Now I'm actually going to be creating and refining some more presets, and probably late 2017 I'll put them up on sale, a pack of 5, a pack of 10. Right now I have one main go-to and then some other ones which I haven't created myself. So I'll leave my own personal one in the description, completely free. If you want to, you can go ahead and download it. If you want to know how to add it to your Lightroom, just look it up on YouTube. I really do hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you found some use from it. It's so cool to see all the talented photographers and videographers that are sprouting up at such a young age nowadays. And all it is practice, 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 whether that be taking the photos or editing them. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you guys want to see one on how I edit my videos, that's actually been really highly requested, more so than this probably. But if you want to see that, leave it in the description, and I'll see you guys in the next one.